Coming up next on the Jeff Crilley Show, you'll meet the leader of a local nonprofit that's making a profound difference in the lives of North Texans. His incredible story just ahead.
Many are predicting that the worst is yet to come, which is unfortunate, said one person here. Until now, they've enjoyed the reputation of being the nation's icebox.
Watched a burglar in his home this morning by webcam.
As a journalist of over 25 years, stories are what make my world turn.
Reporting live from the Dallas newsroom tonight, Jeff Crilley, Fox 4 News.
But in 2008, I took the jump from my familiar life and started a PR firm from my home.
We're talking about anyone with a camcorder like the one I'm using becomes a television network.
We started slowly growing the company, and we now have over 100 clients, and we've branched into the world of live digital broadcasting. I now own 8 different TV studios and have a huge team, and the stories that I now get to share are sometimes the most important of my life. Life has a funny way of coming around full circle. This is the Jeff Crilley Show.
Well, a few years ago, the late, great Toni Brinker came to me and she appeared on my television show and she said, Jeff, there's a distrust between the cops and the community and we need to bring some healing together. And she worked tirelessly to make that come true, and it made a profound difference on this planet. And then tragically, she died in April, and the whole organization has now been turned over to Ian Feuer. He is the president and CEO of One CommunityUSA. Yeah. Well, first of all, let's talk a little bit about Toni, because she was just a trailblazer, wasn't she?
She was. She had a vision for what the country needed for this type of work, and began doing this work over almost 10 years ago, traveling the country, meeting with governors, mayors, police chiefs, gang leaders, to understand, what the issues were, and why there was such a disconnect between law enforcement and the communities that they serve. And out of that work, out of those meetings and travel, she came up with the ideas that became One CommunityUSA.
And just so people can get a visual, this is a TED Talk that she gave a while back. We're going to pull this up on the screen so that you can see the powerhouse we're talking about. And she led a fabulous life. Hanging around the rich and famous. And so what kind of strikes me about Toni is that she could, sip cocktails or have a tea with somebody in Highland Park, but instead she's hanging out in the streets of Dallas. Why was this such a passion for her?
Yeah, I think the story she would tell was she was visiting some friends in a very wealthy neighborhood in New York City, and outside she heard yelling, and when she looked outside, she saw protesters screaming, "What do we want? Dead cops. When do we want them now?" And she was struck by that. It was surprising, not only just to see that in general, but especially given the neighborhood that where she was at the time. And so she said she picked up the phone and called the mayor of Dallas and said, "Hey, I'm seeing this here. What do it might come to Dallas. What are you going to do about it?" And he said, "Well, what are you going to do about it?" And then she did the same thing with the police chief and had the same conversation. And the way she would tell the story was that she said, "What am I going to do? I'm not someone that can do something about these sorts of issues." But from those phone calls came she went through the process of developing the concepts that became this nonprofit.
Sure, and her timing was perfect. I mean, she came up with this some 9 years ago, but then a few years ago, obviously, George Floyd put this on the front pages of every newspaper on the planet. And what it did is validated a concern that she had, 9 years ago. Mm-hmm. So I want to show a PSA that you guys put together a little while ago. Let's go ahead and roll that.
In recent months, some have lost faith and trust in those who protect us. Frustration has blurred our vision, but Americans know a thing or two about uniting for the greater good. Stand united with us to facilitate the kinds of positive dialogue that lead to unified solutions.
I'm all in.
I'm all in.
I'm all in.
We're all in.
Join us.
This time, it's for all of us.
A great PSA, and I know that was made a few years ago. So now you're kind of steering the ship. Ian, tell us your vision for where do we go from here?
Sure. So the nonprofit has two main programs. One is a prison reentry program, and the other is a community program where we work through barbershops and beauty salons in African American, Latino, and Asian communities throughout North Texas. The prison reentry program has two main components. My guys are in the prison every week, meeting with the inmates, and then we put together a class of roughly 25 people where we do a 40-hour training in the prison, and then when they come out, we have an 18-month mentorship program. In the prisons, especially the one that we deal with in Fort Worth, we have a special focus on the veteran community. They have a veterans-only pod, and our classes there are actually intentionally 50% veterans and 50% civilians, or a general population. And we do this especially with the support of the Tarrant County Sheriff and his office. The 18-month mentorship program is especially important. There are a lot of nonprofits that do prison reentry work across the country, and a surprisingly large number that do that in this region as well. We believe that one of the biggest differences of our program versus others is the length of our reentry program. Of our mentorship program. 18 months is long enough that someone, as they're trying to break the old habits that perhaps got them into prison to begin with, is enough to give them the support that they need so that they get past that point. The barbershop program, we're in approximately 90 shops throughout North Texas in roughly 15 cities. We go in with, and everyone that works in the organization is either retired military or retired police or both. When our retired officers go into a new barber shop, they'll meet with the shop owner initially and let them know that the police chief is coming in just to talk with him, talk with his customers, talk with his staff, simply to answer questions. And he sets them up a little bit. He'll ask them things like, well, what do you want to ask the chief of police? And they often don't know what to say. So he'll say to them things like, well, do you want to ask him if when his child gets pulled over driving a car, if they're treated the same as when your child gets pulled over? And they're usually surprised that they can ask that question, and our staff will explain, no, it's exactly why they're coming. They want to have that conversation to increase trust, increase everyone's safety. The next step might be something like the police department will hold roll call in the barbershop and invite the community to come see it. So there's transparency in what those conversations are. Eventually, we get to the point where that evolves to a situation where the barbershop owner actually has the cell phone number of the chief of police. And rather than being afraid of the police showing up, they're calling and asking for the help of the police. We had a great story a few years back where there was a child being trafficked 10 times a day in the parking lot in front of a barbershop. The barbershop owner called the police chief. They were able to get the child off the street and put the madam away, who was doing these horrific things. So I think that's a great success story that we had in that program.
Wow, that's an incredible story. You've also been featured on the national news, including the Dr. Phil show. So let's go ahead and roll that clip.
This season, I've been taking you behind the badge and introducing you to extraordinary police officers and departments all over the country. Recently, we were invited to a special town hall meeting in Dallas, Texas, where city leaders and members of local and state law enforcement gathered, along with hundreds of members of the community, to discuss how to create trust and unity in this city.
We are at Concord Baptist Church in Dallas, Texas. We're bringing two worlds together, our first responders and our citizens. And we're going to discuss the hard issues that many times people turn and run from.
It doesn't mean that one officer makes everyone bad, no more than it makes one black young man that committed a crime make all of us bad. When you look across our nation, our country, there's so much tension between law enforcement and the black community.
I was downtown Dallas July 7th. It's something that we'll always remember. When we do have a tragedy, whether it's a citizen getting shot or an officer getting shot, we need to have some open lines of communication.
Sometimes it's hard to look beyond the stereotype. It's hard to look beyond the uniform. I want to humanize my profession. I want people to know that police officers are community members. You know, we all want the same goals.
It does my heart a lot of good and see law enforcement and the communities that they serve working hand in hand.
I think our citizens have a lot to say. They want their message understood.
We have a very special guest that's with us today. His name is Officer Tommy Norman.
He is the cop that social media just can't get enough of.
He believes in going beyond the badge.
Really, there's two key components. There's creating relationships and then keeping the commitment to those relationships. It's getting out of your police car, sitting on front porches. It's getting to know people's stories and becoming their friends. It has to be authentic. It has to come from the heart. It has to be genuine.
All right, we'll take some questions from the audience.
There's one person who wrote, "How can citizens begin forming a relationship with an officer today?"
We have ride-along programs. That's a good way to not only form a relationship, but to see what we do on a daily basis.
This is kind of in your face. Is there a code of silence with officers?
There shouldn't be a code of silence. If you see a police officer that's breaking the law, you should report him or call him out on it.
We feel like we are profiled, and as an African-American man, I can honestly say we do feel like that. But I think we did make progress today.
You watch the news all week and it's bad, bad, negative, negative, and then you come to an event like this and you realize there's good that can come of things.
Seeing everyone here tonight gives me hope, because tonight gives us a starting place. And we hope it doesn't just stop here, but that we'll go to our neighborhoods, go to our workplaces, and continue these important conversations so that we can move toward healing into a better place.
Wow, what an incredible piece. And you were just telling me that you had something happen in Fort Worth.
Yeah, last year we did a barbershop event in addition to the monthly visits that my staff does and the police officers do for any barbershops that are in our program. We'll host special weekend events where the neighborhood comes out. We'll bring out a gaming truck and just sort of a fun environment. And we did an event about a year ago in Fort Worth where Chief Neil Noakes came out. And at the end of the event, he and some of our folks walked around the neighborhood and literally just knocked on doors and said, "Hi, I'm the Chief of Police. Nice to meet you." At one of the homes, it was obviously they weren't expecting the Chief of Police to show up, and I think she was roughly 65-year-old African-American woman opened the door and was so excited to see the chief, ran over, they hugged, and I think we all were amazed at her reaction where she said, "This is wonderful. I've lived here for 30 years. Nothing like this has ever happened. We want more of this. Please keep coming back." And what really struck me at that time was it seemed like it was the opposite message than what we were seeing in the media in general, where people were saying, we don't want the police. This was a woman completely caught off guard, and her immediate reaction was, "Where have you been? Please keep coming. We want to see you more."
Sure. And you've been at a number of these events. It's almost magical when you get a cop and a member of the community together in the same room, and they feel each other's energy, and they know that cops aren't bad, and we need to identify with each other more.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
You've got something coming up on Friday?
We do. We do a lot of smaller events, and so one of the things we do as part of our barbershop program, our Shop Talk program, is called Pizza with a Cop. And so we have a barbershop in Arlington where we'll be hosting lunch. We'll bring in pizza, and the police department will come in. I think the police chief is coming. We invite the community and any of the customers, and it's just an opportunity for people to sit down and basically the old-fashioned idea of breaking bread together, hot pizza and drinks, and just to have a conversation and start to build that trust. It makes the community safer, makes them comfortable with the police, and quite honestly, it makes the police safer as well.
Absolutely. And I can't think, these days it seems like it's never been more thankless to be a cop. And there are cop shortages all over the country. They're having trouble filling the ranks. The older cops are retiring, and the young cops are not coming in as aggressively as they had in years past. So bridging that gap between the community and police is critical right now, isn't it?
It is. It is. Everyone is safer. Everyone feels safer. Nobody wants another story that on the news of some horrible, tragic incident that happened. And we believe that these programs are going a long way to help to prevent those things. We've seen huge success in North Texas, and over time we have a vision as an organization that these programs belong everywhere in the country. Everyone that we've talked to that's been involved agrees that these programs need to be everywhere. We've received calls from most major cities around the country asking us to bring their programs there, and that's part of our vision to be able to open this model up in a way that can be expanded nationally.
And you do depend on donations and volunteers. Speaking as a volunteer yourself, how rewarding has it been for you? And talk about the event coming up in August.
Sure. So yes, I've been involved as a volunteer for I guess over 3 years. Initially, I became involved with One CommunityUSA because Toni Brinker asked me to come on board and build, activate, and run her advisory board. which I did. And we have an advisory board of about 20 people, an incredible advisory board. So I did that, and then I also shortly thereafter joined the board of directors. So I was involved as a volunteer for a long time. As part of that, I would come to events, and as a part of our prison program, as I mentioned, our program is a 40-hour program, which is generally broken up into 1-hour segments. The only piece that is longer than that is the financial education piece. My background before doing this was I spent 30 years in finance, both institutionally and on the retail side. And so I have 30 years of finance experience that I brought into the jails, thinking that I understood the basics that I could teach folks that are in that situation. The first time I went in, I learned a lot about how little I understood about the severe lack of financial education that exists in that population. The first question I got that I didn't even understand was, but how do we get a bank account? And my first thought was, there's no how. Go to a bank, tell them you want a bank account. And they explained to me, we don't know how to go to a bank. We've never been taught how to do that. Would they even give us one? And so after that first time, I learned that my lesson plan just wasn't really applicable. What I needed to do was come in with some ideas and then listen and answer a lot of questions. And so the finance piece actually is the only piece that's 2 hours. Everything else is 1 hour. And so I did that for a long time. And even now as president and CEO, I continue to teach the finance class. And as far as the event in August, our next in prison or in jail 40-hour program will be August 12th to the 16th at Green Bay Prison in Terry County.
And you need volunteers for that.
We do. As I mentioned, we have 40 hours to teach. Sure. I have a great staff, but 40 hours is a long time.
Sure.
And so we're always looking for volunteers. You can be a subject matter expert in part of the curriculum. The curriculum is written. We just need people to deliver it. But even if you've never been in a jail or a prison, even if you don't think that whatever you do professionally applies to what those folks are doing, we have lessons that need to be taught, and it is incredibly rewarding to come in and teach that. I think everyone's surprised at how incredibly appreciative the inmates are. Just the fact that someone that any professional would take time away from their family, from their business, to come in and just spend time with them. It's unbelievably rewarding.
Sure. And in the last minute or so, let's talk about donations, because all nonprofits I think are hurting right now. Sure. I haven't met anybody who's completely funded. And Toni did what she could when she was alive, but now you guys are kind of in a bind, aren't you?
Yes, she did a great job of finding some long-term funding sources, and some of that continues today. Some parts of the programs we're still looking for long-term funding for. In the past, we were very fortunate that because of Toni's situation, when there were shortfalls, she was simply able to personally fill in those gaps. Obviously, unfortunately, since her passing, we don't have that ability. Working very hard to find additional funding sources. And so, yes, any donations are helpful.
Awesome. Final thoughts. What would you like to leave people with?
First of all, I'm very appreciative of having the opportunity to do this with you, Jeff. Thank you.
Of course.
I think the work that we're doing is incredibly meaningful. I spent 30 years in finance, and I found through the end of my career that when I would come home, my children would say, how come you don't tell us about what you did for work today? You tell us about this volunteer work you're doing with One CommunityUSA. And after a while, it started to occur to me that really was where my heart where my heart was, where what I was finding was meaningful. The way I was spending my time meaningfully each day was in the volunteer work I was doing with One CommunityUSA. I am so fortunate that I get to work with incredible veterans and retired police, and helping, and that's on my staff, as well as the existing law enforcement folks I work with, and feel like I'm making a difference through the volunteer work I'm doing to making everyone's community safer, which is so important to everybody.
Well, I can't think of a better person to carry on Toni's great legacy. Thank you for
Jeff.
coming on the show.
Thank you.
We're going to end with the website, which is onecommunityusa.org. The great Ian Feuer. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Jeff.
That's it for now. We'll see you next time.